No one knew his pain until a cleaner's daughter discovered his tears and changed everything. Daniel sat in the dim light of his office, the weight of corporate ambition pressing heavily on his chest. The marble walls, slick with the sheen of success, felt more like a prison than a sanctuary. He took a shaky breath, his thoughts racing, a cacophony of regret, fear, and anger swirling like a storm. His career, once bright with promise, had devolved into a struggle against the very system that had crushed his father's dreams. Beneath the polished surface lay a festering wound, reminding him of the dreams he had sacrificed for a title and paycheck. No one here understood his pain, especially not the high-powered executives who saw only numbers and profit. He was a hollow man, hiding behind a facade of competency, unwilling to confront the memories of a father who trusted the law to provide justice, only to be betrayed by it. The cold light of the office seemed to mock him as he wiped his face, the sting of unshed tears betraying his carefully curated poise. How could he fight for the justice his father deserved when day by day he was complicit in the same injustices? He leaned back in his chair, feeling the fabric of his suit scratch against his skin, a constant reminder of the expectations he carried, both his own and those imposed by others. The thought of returning home to an empty apartment gnawed at his mind. He couldn't bear the silence, nor could he escape the bitter taste of loss that haunted his thoughts. Before he could drown in despair, a soft knock interrupted his internal chaos. It was Lisa, the janitor's daughter, her face illuminated by the faint glow of the overhead light. "I didn't mean to disturb you, sir," she said, her voice steady despite the uncertainty in her eyes. But there was a depth to her gaze, a fierce belief that shone like a beacon. Unlike the rest of the world who seemed to guard their own secrets, Lisa had approached with an openness that drew him in. She didn't know his anguish, but her mere presence was a balm to his wounded spirit. "It's fine, Lisa. What's on your mind?" he replied, forced to mask his turmoil beneath a thin layer of professionalism. She hesitated, then stepped closer. "I can see it in your eyes, you seem lost. I just wanted you to know it's okay to feel broken sometimes." His defenses crumbled under her gaze, and suddenly he was spilling out his regrets, the ambition that consumed him, the emotional poverty that festered in his chest, and the legacy he was failing to honor. Lisa listened, fierce and empathetic, breathing life into the shame that had stifled him. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. As he spoke, something shifted within him. Lisa's fierce passion ignited a spark of his own. For the first time in years, he wasn't just digging deeper into his despair, he was contemplating action. What if? The thought slipped unbidden into his mind. What if they turned this sensitivity into strength? What if together, they exposed the company's darkness? The thought left him breathless, caught between hope and fear. The corporate giants would fight back. Could he really take on the very system that had broken him? Just as his resolve began to crystallize, the urgent ring of his phone shattered the moment, an unknown number flashing across the screen, pulling him back into the depths of uncertainty. The call could change everything, but would it lead to salvation or further anguish? Daniel's hand trembled slightly as he reached for his phone, the call sending a tremor of anxiety through him. He recognized the number. It belonged to his old mentor, a man with deep connections in the legal world. Taking a deep breath, he pressed accept, the phone hot against his ear. "Daniel," came the familiar voice, gruff yet comforting, "I've been hearing some troubling things about the corporate landscape you're navigating. They're not just affecting your career, they're creating a toxic environment for many." His heart raced. This was the moment he had subconsciously been waiting for, a lifeline to steer him away from the abyss. Can you talk more about this?" Daniel stammered, suddenly aware of the weight that lay in his response. Meet me tomorrow, same coffee shop. I have information that may help you if you're willing to listen, his mentor replied. The line went dead, leaving Daniel in silence. The threat of this involuntary partnership with his pain loomed heavy. However, he felt the flicker of purpose igniting within him. This could be the push he needed, the chance to reclaim the narrative of his life. Yet, a shadow of doubt crept into his mind, whispering caution. Was he ready? He glanced over at Lisa, still standing awkwardly near the doorway. You okay? She asked softly, concern etching her features. Yeah. Just a lot on my mind, he replied, though the truth loomed larger than life. He wanted to tell her about the call, about the potential turning point. But a part of him remained hesitant. How could he veil his ambitions beneath the weight of others' sufferings? What if I told you I have a plan? He said, surprising himself. The words hung in the air. He wasn't even certain what this plan would entail, but he felt the urgency of the moment propel him forward. Lisa leaned closer, her eyes wide with interest. What kind of plan? I might confront the company, expose their practices, and fight for justice for my father, he stated with newfound conviction. Do you think it's safe? She asked, brows knitted in concern. Safe? No, probably not. But staying silent is a betrayal, he admitted, his voice trembling. Each word became a promise to himself, a commitment to honor not just his father's legacy but the shared struggles present in those corporate walls he so despised. With each passing moment, a profound realization struck him. Confronting the darkness of his surroundings also meant confronting the darkness within. Could he really find liberation in that conflict? The notion gave him pause, but it also reinforced his desire to wield his pain as a weapon against a system that thrived on silence. As they spoke, a plan began to form in his mind, a strategic approach to gather evidence, channel his fears into actionable ambition. There would be risks involved, possibly even dire consequences, but a sense of urgency propelled him forward. He would not just be battling for his own relief, he would be standing for all those who felt powerless. Let us do this together, he said suddenly, looking into Lisa's eyes. There was something electric in that moment, a connectivity that felt transformative. I'm with you, she replied, her determination unwavering, but as they shared a moment of solidarity, a new coldness crept in, knowledge that corporate giants rarely go down easy. Could they withstand the torrent that seemed inevitable? With uncertainty looming ahead, the night wrapped around them like a shroud, deepening the stakes of their uncharted venture. Tomorrow awaited with the promise of confrontation and possibility. The path would be perilous, but for the first time in a long while, Daniel felt clarity overtaking his fear. The following day would determine if he was ready to face not just the company that haunted his father's legacy but also the shadows within his own soul. As he prepared for the morning, one thought resonated louder than the rest. The time had come to face the giants that loomed over him, both in the boardroom and in the mirror. The sun filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow across Daniel's room, yet he felt a chill deep within. Today was the day. With every passing hour, his resolve solidified, and alongside it, a growing anxiety that either pushed him forward or rooted him in place. He moved through the morning ritual with a mechanical precision, each movement deliberate but devoid of enthusiasm. In reflection, Daniel understood the magnitude of what lay ahead of him. The process of gathering evidence was daunting. How could he band together his scattered thoughts into a coherent plan that would shine a light on corporate malpractice? The enormity of it all felt like a boulder crushing down on his chest. But he reclaimed one underlying truth. This was the first step he was choosing for himself, the first step toward reclaiming not only justice for his father but also his own sense of agency. He made his way to the coffee shop, each footfall echoing louder in his mind like a countdown. What if his mentor had more than just words of consolation? What if he discovered ways to navigate the corporate labyrinth? The potential of insight was intoxicating, yet the prospect of failure loomed ominously. Lisa met him at the coffee shop, her eyes sparkling with a mix of encouragement and urgency. You ready? She asked, her voice steady. In that moment, Daniel could see the commitment reflected in her pupils, a reminder that he wasn't alone in this venture. "I think so," he replied, though his uncertainty lingered like a specter. The familiar aroma of roasted coffee filled the air, but the flavor of apprehension mixed bitterly on his tongue. As they found a small table, a wave of nervous energy washed over him. The shop bustled with activity, yet Daniel's mind focused intensely on the task at hand. He replayed his mentor's last message before they both arrived. He had information, yes, but would it be enough? Would it truly be actionable? He spotted his mentor entering and immediately shifted in his seat. The man seemed aged beyond his years, his expression a mixture of wisdom and worry. When their eyes met, Daniel felt an unspoken understanding pass between them. The weight of the situation hung in the air as the mentor settled in his seat. "Daniel," he began, his voice low but firm, "what you're considering requires more than just courage, it requires strategy." Daniel felt a flicker of hope ignite in him. This was no longer just a passive struggle but a proactive choice, a commitment to take control of the narrative that orbited him. "Tell me what you know," Daniel urged, his curiosity propelling him into the discussion. The mentor leaned in, his demeanor shifting to one of grave importance. "The company has more skeletons in its closet than you realize. I've gathered documents and corroborating testimonies. It won't be easy, but if you want to expose them, we need to be precise and methodical." As the information flowed, Daniel's sense of purpose crystallized. He felt the ingrained wisdom of his mentor dig deep into him, filling the gaps of doubt with both a palpable plan and a sense of resolve. For the first time, he could see not just the giants he had to face in the boardroom, but the resilience blossoming within him. Lisa watched attentively, her expression filled with anticipation. Could they navigate this minefield together? "Every step you take matters," his mentor continued. "But understand the stakes, they won't take kindly to a revolt. You'll need to go into this with absolute conviction." Mind racing, Daniel grappled with the enormity of this belief. Each point highlighted by his mentor was a reminder of the fight that lay ahead. They would orchestrate a campaign of truth against those who hid behind a curtain of corporate glamour. Yet as clarity propelled him forward, doubt flickered in the corners of his mind. What if everything fell apart? What if the truth became another weapon against him? Daniel glanced at Lisa, her unwavering support lighting a path through the murky uncertainty. She was here, and that meant something powerful. This world lacked the safety net he desperately craved, and yet, as they made eye contact again, he dove deeper into his resolve. He would confront not only the corporate facades but also carve out his own identity in contrast, stepping beyond his father's shadow. "Let us put this into action," Daniel said, newfound vigor coursing through his veins. But before they could finalize their plans, the sudden jolt of the telephone going off shattered the moment, a sharp reminder that trouble stalked them like shadows. Could the decision they were about to make withstand the inevitable counterattack? The weight of that uncertainty pressed against him, compelling him to question not just their strategy, but every painful sacrifice that lay ahead. Would his journey lead him to liberation, or entrap him further in chaos? As they each reached for their respective laptops, Daniel steeled himself for the battles to come, a tempest forming within. This was just the beginning, a precursor to the storms that awaited them. Tomorrow, he would need to step into the darkness without reservation, but the flickering doubt nagged at the edges of his resolve. If he was going to face the giants, he needed to harness his fear into a formidable weapon. The time for action drew nearer, but with each passing moment, Daniel questioned whether he had truly prepared himself for what lay ahead. Daniel's heart raced as he pressed the phone to his ear, the image of his mentor and Lisa blurring in his vision. "What is it?" he demanded, bracing for news that could tip the precarious balance they had just established. "Daniel," the voice on the other end was cold and dispassionate. "We need to talk. Now." His stomach dropped. It was from someone within the company, someone entrenched in the very web he was attempting to untangle. Each word felt like a stake through his resolve. He knew this meeting could change everything, yet part of him ached to hear what they had to say. "Where?" he rasped. Can't say too much over the phone. Meet me at the usual place, 10 minutes, the voice instructed before abruptly hanging up. Everything okay? Lisa's brow creased in concern as Daniel's hand lowered from his ear. The tumultuous emotions swirling inside him reflected in her eyes, magnifying the weight of uncertainty he felt. I have to go, he said, his voice strained. Go? We haven't even finalized our plans, she protested, the urgency in her tone a mixture of support and apprehension. I'll be quick, he assured her, trying to convey confidence he didn't fully feel. It may be important. With that, he rushed out of the cafe, the door swinging behind him with a soft chime that felt like an echo of finality. The world outside blurred into a kaleidoscope of hues and sounds, and with each step, he battled anxiety threatening to engulf him. The meeting could be a trap, a diversion, or worse, a means to silence him before he even made his move. He arrived at the alley they had designated, a forgotten fragment of the city with puddles reflecting fractured lights. The air felt thick, suffocating, giving life to all his fears. What awaited him now? Expectation clawed at him, and when he spotted a figure emerging from the shadows, it took every ounce of composure to mask his apprehension. Daniel, the man greeted, his voice low and conspiratorial. He was someone Daniel recognized, a middle manager whose hands were naively seen as clean but who had fingers dipped in murky waters. What did you want to discuss? Daniel replied, his tone firm, hiding the uncertainty that nagged at his gut. The man looked around, ensuring no one was close enough to overhear. There's more to the story than you think. You're stepping into dangerous territory. They won't hesitate to protect their interests, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. Why are you telling me this? Daniel questioned, suspicion lurking in his mind. Every instinct screamed betrayal, yet a part of him ached for any sliver of insight into the corruption at play. Because I don't want to see another innocent caught in the crossfire, he replied, his expression hardening. I've seen what they can do. Just understand the depth of what you're trying to expose. Intrigued, yet wary, Daniel leaned in. What do you know? The manager hesitated, glancing around again as if searching for eavesdroppers. There are documents, emails, proof of their misconduct, but getting it could be a death sentence for you. I can guide you, but you must understand the risks. Every word he spoke resonated with Daniel, igniting emotions that swung between hope and trepidation. Just tell me what I have to do. The affirmation slipped out instinctively, the decision already solidifying in his mind. Go to the archives. There's a blind spot, an old storage room no one checks. But you'll need to be quick. They're tightening their ranks, the manager warned, urgency creeping into his tone. Make sure you have everything documented before anyone notices. Time is not on your side. Daniel processed the information, realization dawning. The gears of fate were already turning. He was no longer just a piece on the board, he would be the one driving the plan forward. But a sudden chill overcame him. How many battles had he unwittingly unleashed? Is this really worth it? He muttered under his breath, unearthing his doubts as waves of anxiety crashed over him. Would this path lead him to justice for his father, or into the clutches of a darkness he couldn't escape? Only you can answer that, the man noted, fading back into the shadows. As Daniel turned to leave, a voice called out from behind him. It was the familiar warmth of Lisa, the injection of empathy he had subconsciously relied upon. Are you all right? She asked cautiously, trying to uncover whatever turmoil he had managed to hide. Clenching his jaw, Daniel grappled with the implications of his choice. He needed to bring Lisa into the fold, they would need to align their paths, yet fear of putting her in danger held him back. I have to handle this, he stammered, the weight of secrecy and obligation pressing heavily on him. She stepped closer, eyes searching his. You know I'm here for you, right? Whatever it is, we can face it together. In that moment, Daniel felt the resonance of true partnership. But now, choices converged. The urgency of action and the moral implications of involving those close to him clashed violently within. Together he mumbled, testing the word, relishing its promise yet haunted by the risks, but before he could respond adequately, an electric tension crackled through the air. The haunting possibility of betrayal was still lurking. Tomorrow would test his courage. Today's discussions left him at a precipice. It all began with data and evidence, yet the depths of human complexity threatened to pull him down. As he prepared to plunge into this whirlwind of truth, he realized that confronting the giants meant wrestling not only with corporate malfeasance but with his own heart, and the fear of losing everything he held dear began gnawing at him. Was he truly ready to dive into this clash? He was about to find out what lay waiting on the other side of his resolve, where the lines between right and wrong blurred in a cacophonous sea of shadows. The weight of anticipation was almost unbearable as Daniel's thoughts spiraled. He replayed the middle manager's warnings, each word a trigger for fresh waves of doubt. His heart pounded in synchronicity with the footsteps echoing on the pavement. The world around him sharpened and muted all at once. How had things come to this? The very fabric of his existence now felt like a thin veil stretched over a chasm of uncertainty. That he paused on a crowded street corner. The sounds of the city buzzed around him, momentarily blurring into a backdrop of chaos as his mind raced. The urgency of his mission mingled with the fear of what lay ahead. A bleak resolution gripped him. He couldn't ignore the call of inquiry, the need for justice, but at what cost? He glanced at his phone. The screen lit up with a single text from Lisa, an innocuous "Are you okay?" Each letter felt like an anchor in tumultuous seas, yet he hesitated to respond. He wanted to share everything with her, to explain the magnitude of the risks, but fear gripped him. The ghosts of betrayal loomed large, and trusting someone with his secrets could endanger both their lives. Breaking away from the crowd, he navigated through side streets, keeping his head low, the urgency building within him. He was supposed to be entering a new phase of his career, just a few weeks ago merely an analyst. But the dark undercurrents in the company demanded he embrace a duality he wasn't sure he was ready for. The naive idealism of his younger self warred against the hardening resolve that these unsettling whispers forged in him. He arrived at the unmarked door of the archive, an old, neglected building that seemed to breathe secrets. As he stepped inside, a chill coursed through him. Dust motes danced in the dim light, and he hesitated, a sense of foreboding coursing through him. The warnings echoed anew: "Be quick," "blind spot," and "death sentence," each urgent phrase a reminder of the lengths he had gone to uncover the truth. The ghosts of what could happen interlaced with the tangible urgency of the moment. Navigating through decrepit shelves, his mind turned inward, wrestling with competing narratives. Was he courageous for pursuing this path, or reckless? He delved deeper into the rooms, determined to uncover the evidence that could shake the system to its core, and yet the fear of being exposed clawed at him. Every small sound, the creak of a floorboard, the rustle of a plastic wrapper, sent his pulse racing. Focusing on the task at hand, he unearthed box after box, skimming the faded labels, praying for a glimmer of information that could justify his intrusion into the shadows. It was a probing more than a search. He had to find the stories behind the files, the names connected to the misdeeds, the plans they had hidden. Finally, in an obscure corner, he found what he was searching for: a box lined with old office documents, yellowed with age. The moment was pivotal. He felt it in his bones, a shift signaling something monumental was about to unfold. As he began to leaf through the contents, a sinking realization washed over him. These documents were weighted with histories, twisted tales of deceit that others had buried under the weight of ambition. It wasn't just about the data, it was about the people whose lives had been upended by corporate decisions cloaked in shadows, whose stories were silenced while climbing faceless corporate ladders. He envisioned Lisa's eyes, her empathetic gaze that never judged but always encouraged pursuit of clarity. If he succeeded, could he protect her? Their partnership could be a double-edged sword, cutting both ways in this labyrinthine fight. He quickly pulled out his phone, determined to capture evidence without delay. His fingers trembled, the gravity of betrayal intensifying as he wondered in passing how far this mess could entangle Lisa. In essence, how far would his ambition drag them both? Suddenly, the distinct sound of footsteps approached. Heart pounding, Panic flooded his veins as he slid the documents hastily. He couldn't be discovered here. Revealing himself would mean severing any chance of striking back against the corrupt powers. Daniel. A voice whispered urgently as the door creaked open, and shadows spilled into the dim light. In that instant, adrenaline surged, calculating reflexes ignited. The urgency of the moment crystallized. There was someone lurking at the door, someone who may either understand his intent or spell his downfall. Daniel, are you okay? The voice was familiar, but in this context, it brought only dread. In the charged air, he realized he'd reached a tipping point, not just with his mission, but in his very essence. Encountering his own reflection in this chaotic mirror of moral choices led him to a reckoning far deeper than the evidence he sought. What lay ahead was unfathomable, a journey where every secret discovered could upend him, and the price of truth felt more perilous than anything he had endured so far. Now's not the time, Lisa, he inhaled sharply, the fear palpable. But the truth waited just out of reach. With everything to lose, the next moment held the potential to transform his destiny entirely. Would his resolve withstand the onslaught of truth, both personal and corporate? Was the awakening of courage within him enough to navigate the treacherous terrain ahead? Confrontation lay ahead. He braced himself for what revelations might emerge next. The shadows coiled around Daniel like a suffocating shroud as he faced the figure at the door. Lisa's eyes, wide with concern, searched his face for answers. The weight of unspoken truths bore down heavily between them, amplifying the tension in the air. Daniel, what are you doing here? She whispered, her voice blending with the dust in the room. Each syllable resonated with curiosity, yet underlined with an urgency he couldn't ignore. With a swift decision, he stepped back from the half-open box of documents, clenching his fists to steady the tempest brewing inside him. I need to know what they're hiding, he shot back, the words sharper than he intended. The urge to shield her was palpable, colliding with the impulse to share the burden. What do you mean? The frown deepened on her brow, and Daniel was reminded of the earnestness that drew him to her in the first place. Her unwavering belief in justice was both a balm and a hammer, driving his fear back deeper into the corners of his mind. If I don't uncover what's in these files, he gestured to the box behind him, I might lose everything: my job, my integrity, you. Panic flickered in his chest, and for a moment he faltered. The magnitude of his actions weighed heavy upon his conscience. He couldn't let her become a casualty in his fight. Why didn't you tell me? Her voice quivered, and it magnified the fragments of disappointment he could see in her eyes. I didn't want to drag you into this, he admitted quietly, terror mixing with regret. The truth curled around his heart as he fought to maintain his composure. Lisa stepped closer, the determination in her demeanor stoking a fire in his belly. Daniel, I can help you. You don't have to face this alone. If you think you're doing this to protect me, it will destroy both of us. Her words began to seep into the nooks of his mind, igniting a realization. What had he become? The shadows of corporate evil carved deeply into his soul, but with her by his side, perhaps he could confront the darkness. For the first time, he felt the fracture of his resolve solidify into something more. Okay, he breathed, the decision washing over him like a tide pulling him back from the brink. They were in this together now, intertwined not just by their ambitions but through the trust that was rapidly forming. His gaze caught hers, and something fundamental shifted, a pact born out of shared purpose. Unsure of the threat still lurking outside the archives, he shifted gears. We have to be careful, he warned, a calculated promise flowing from his lips. If they find us here, it's over. For both of us. Let us not stick around to find out, she said, her voice steady, confidence playing across her features. Show me what you found. With a tremor of excitement lacing his anxiety, he motioned for her to join him. As Lisa began poring over the documents, Daniel's ambivalence ebbed. There was courage growing between them, a new trust that transcended mere partnership. But with this also came the haunting realization that they now both stood on the precipice of danger. A moment passed, the air thick with revelations waiting to unfold. Each yellowed page they touched felt like peeling back layers of deceit, the veils of the corporate entity shielding its darkest secrets. Amidst the swirling uncertainty, they began piecing together connections, names, and events, unwittingly rewriting the narrative of their lives. As urgency drove them deeper into the folds of confidential information, a creeping sensation nagged at the back of Daniel's mind. A hidden threat was bound to expose itself. The shadows in the corners of his vision whispered of approaching danger, and his heart raced at the thought of it. If they continued down this path, what additional sacrifices would they need to make? "Daniel, look at this," Lisa's voice broke through his spiraling thoughts, a thrill of discovery etched in her features. She pointed to a name laced through the documentation, a name that triggered a cascade of memories. "Do you recognize this?" His breath caught. The name resonated like a bell, tolling the realization of consequences yet to come. It was not just corporate corruption encoded in these pages. There were strings tied to personal vendettas, ties that could threaten their very lives. The stakes had risen. The labyrinthine depths of deception darkened around them, and the path ahead felt perilous. Together, they bore the weight of the truth and the storm it could unleash. "What have we gotten ourselves into?" he muttered, eyes locked with hers. "Only what we're prepared to face," she replied, steeling her resolve. They would need to traverse this treacherous landscape together, but one thing was certain: their unity would be tested in ways they could not yet foresee, and the fear of what lay ahead loomed larger than ever. In that moment of camaraderie, a deeper conflict brewed, and Daniel knew this was only the beginning of an odyssey that could reshape their identities forever. As the urgency of their mission sharpened, Daniel felt the walls closing in. The moment of truth was drawing near. Would they find the courage required to confront the forces set against them, or would the revelations bear a price they were unprepared to pay? The air in the cramped archive room crackled with tension and urgency. Daniel leaned closer to the documents, the golden light from the single bulb above causing the dust particles to dance like small phantoms. As he analyzed the name Lisa had pointed out, Gerald Finch, he felt a jolt of recognition mixed with dread. Finch wasn't just a name, he was a player in the corporate game, a shadowy figure rumored to operate in the gray areas of legality and ethics. "What do you know about him?" Lisa broke through his thoughts, her bright eyes fixed on him with expectation. "I've heard whispers," Daniel admitted. Memories flooded back, late-night conversations in the break room where rumor met caution. He's connected to the recent layoffs. Rumor has it he's been using underhanded methods to undermine competitors. Daniel's voice trailed off, the implications hanging heavy in the air. Their investigation seemed to be leading them directly into a web of manipulation and greed, not merely a business strategy but a personal vendetta that could ruin lives. Lisa's fingers danced over a few papers, her brow furrowing with intense focus. If he's involved, he could be the key to everything and also the biggest threat we face. Daniel felt a swell of anxiety bubble up. What if he discovers what we're doing? The thought clawed at his insides. The powerful often retaliated against perceived threats, and he could feel the weight of their precarious situation pressing down on him. "Then we need to move fast," Lisa declared, a spark igniting in her expression. "We can't let fear hold us back." Her confidence was infectious, but with it came the acknowledgement of the risk they had both embraced. "Right. We're not just exposing the depths of corporate betrayal, we're also putting our careers and our lives on the line." The reality of their predicament settled heavily within him. Yet, something had shifted inside Daniel. The fear felt less suffocating and morphed into a recognition of the power they wielded through knowledge. As they continued to sift through the pages, Daniel's resolve crystallized. Each word was a brushstroke painting the picture of a treacherous reality. The malicious intent hidden between the lines ignited a fire within him, a heat that propounded the urgency to act, not just to preserve his integrity but for the sake of everyone affected. "What's our next move?" Lisa asked, pulling Daniel from his thoughts again. He inhaled slowly, weighing the options as the possibilities unfolded in his mind. "I think we need to gather more evidence on Finch and his operations. We can't present half-baked findings. We have to expose him thoroughly." Daniel's heart hammered in his chest as he declared their course of action. The thief of time was almost tangible, encircling them. They had entered a labyrinth of danger, but he felt a sense of liberation. For so long, he had been paralyzed by fear and doubt. Now, it was morphing into a burning desire to confront the deep-rooted deceit that plagued not just their workplace but the entire industry. "Then let us go to the source," Lisa urged, her lips curling into a fierce smile. "We need to get access to the sealed reports. They might have the damning evidence we need." The thrill coursed through Daniel's veins. They were moving beyond mere resistance, their pursuit transformed. Slowly but surely, they were stepping into the roles he had yearned to embody: fighter and protector. The stakes could not be higher, but so too was their commitment to justice. As they prepared to leave the archive, a noise echoed outside, the jangling sound of footsteps drawing closer. Daniel's heart raced, and the fear he thought he had shed slithered back into his consciousness. "Quick, we need to hide," he whispered urgently, casting a glance toward a dark corner of the room. The shadows now felt like an ally rather than an adversary, providing cover as they slipped beneath a nearby table. With panic racing through him, Daniel's mind surged with questions. How much time did they have? Would they be discovered? What would he lose if they were caught? The clarity he'd felt moments earlier frayed under the weight of uncertainty. In the snug confines of their hiding spot, the adrenaline surged through him, igniting a sense of purpose that surged with every hushed breath. They were defined not just by their fight against corruption but by their desperate attempt to salvage their integrity and their existence. The footsteps stopped just outside the door, and Daniel's heart pounded as he traded hesitant glances with Lisa. Would they be forced to confront the very monster they sought to expose, or was it merely a distraction? One thing was certain: every choice they made now could either liberate them or seal their fates. As the door creaked open, the air thickened with suspense. What awaited them on the other side could shift everything they had worked for or end it in an instant. The door opened slowly, revealing a figure silhouetted against the harsh corridor light. Daniel's breath caught as the intruder stepped inside, squinting into the dim room, seemingly unaware of the two hidden occupants. It was Mark, a senior executive known for his ruthless management style and questionable alliances. Daniel's stomach churned. Finch's right-hand man was not the person he wanted to encounter now. "Where are those reports?" Mark grumbled, his voice low and gravelly. He paced the room, kicking aside papers as if dismissing their importance. Daniel felt himself tense, every sinew coiling in apprehension. If Mark accidentally discovered them, not only would their investigation be compromised, but they'd also risk everything they had fought for, everything they were becoming. "We can't stay here forever," Lisa whispered beside him, her breath barely audible. But Daniel shook his head minutely, urging her to remain silent. This was a moment for careful observation rather than rash actions. His growing determination to fight back needed to be strategic, not impulsive. "Finch can't afford a leak," Mark muttered, shuffling through a stack of documents on the desk. "If anyone finds out about the layoffs being planned, it's game over for him. And me. Game over." The word struck Daniel like a lightning bolt, igniting a new fire within him. Here was the acknowledgement of a brewing storm, the missing piece of the puzzle that tied Finch's malicious actions to the environment he had almost resigned himself to, tangled in corporate misuse. Perhaps he could use this revelation to his advantage. They could leverage Mark's fear of exposure without revealing their presence. Leaning closer to listen, he felt a flicker of inspiration pushing him forward. "We need to take a risk," he thought, weighing the options in his mind. First to gather evidence, then to expose the reality that left him feeling suffocated for so long. Without thinking, he dared to breathe, the adrenaline mixing with a newfound clarity. The urgency of action had fueled his growth, sharpening his instincts. He was no longer just passive, he was grappling with the full strength of integrity and commitment echoing within him. "What do you need?" Mark snapped suddenly, glancing around the room again like a predator. Daniel's heart raced, his presence was dangerously close. Using the moment, he summoned all of his resolve to act. He knew their situation was precarious, but Mark's paranoia provided them a window of opportunity. While Mark rifled through the piles of legal jargon and corporate jargon, Daniel carefully extracted his phone, the dim screen illuminating his intent. The shadows allied with him, but he'd need to walk a fine line. Texting Lisa with brisk efficiency, he tapped, "We strategize while we listen. We can't let fear paralyze us." The sound of scuffling springs returned Daniel to the scene. "This is a disaster waiting to happen," Mark growled, crumpling a piece of paper in his hand before tossing it aside. Daniel's mind raced. He could read between the lines, sensing Mark's panic could become their leverage against Finch. "Let us leverage this," he said in a low whisper to Lisa. Her eyes lit with understanding, even as curiosity battled with caution. Daniel recognized this as a pivotal moment, a chance not just to triumph over deceit but to unveil the hidden potentials within both of them. As if reading Daniel's thoughts, Mark abruptly turned, pacing towards a nearby filing cabinet. The risk of being discovered escalated, and Daniel's senses heightened, every nerve ending alive with urgency. "We're on borrowed time," he breathed, adrenaline sharpening his instincts as he prepared for the next step. Suddenly, Mark's phone buzzed on the table, disrupting the heavy tension in the room. He cursed under his breath, picking it up before examining the screen. With a sudden swiftness, his expression shifted, a look of resolve crossing his features. "The board meeting's today," he stated, his tone laced with urgency. "If Finch doesn't deliver soon, it could all unravel." Daniel exchanged a tense glance with Lisa, the potential paths of their investigation crystallizing with clarity. The board meeting could serve as a pivotal moment if they played their cards right. They could gather enough evidence to expose Finch, not just endanger their livelihoods. But now the stakes had risen. They needed to act before the meeting began, otherwise, their plan could disintegrate. How far would they be willing to go to confront their fears and seize the truth? As Mark exited the archives, leaving the door ajar, Daniel forced himself to move past his fraying nerves. The shift within him was palpable, a transformation from passive observer to an active participant who had the ability to disrupt a powerful tide. They weren't merely gathering evidence, they were entering a crucial battlefield. Daniel's heart raced as he grasped the weight of his next move. Would they find the damning evidence they needed? Or would they face the consequences of their defiance against a system designed to crush them? What they would do next would dictate not only their future but also provide a pivotal confrontation against corruption itself. Would Daniel stand firm in this newfound determination, or would doubt creep back in as the stakes grew impossibly high? Mark's footsteps echoed in the hallway as he exited the room, leaving behind a tense atmosphere filled with the potential for discovery. Daniel felt adrenaline coursing through his veins, pushing him into action, propelled by the urgency of the moment. No longer would he be the passive bystander. He was ready to carve out his own path, and this was his opportunity to act. "Now," he whispered to Lisa, his voice steady despite the storm brewing inside him. They needed to take advantage of the few minutes of solitude that Mark's departure provided. He gestured to the scattered papers on the desk, his mind racing with potential strategies. If they could collect enough concrete proof before the board meeting, they would possess leverage that Finch could not ignore. As they hurriedly sifted through the documents, Daniel felt a sense of purpose ignite. Each paper yielded insights into Finch's plans. Layoffs, restructured departments, and a desperation bordering on paranoia were all laid bare. The narrative was clearer than before, a glimpse into the ruthless corporate machine seeking to maintain its grip through fear and intimidation. "Look at this," Lisa suddenly called, holding up a financial report that illustrated the deepening chasm between the company's profits and its investment in employee welfare. "This could cripple Finch's arguments today. He can't hide behind these numbers." Daniel nodded, impressed by Lisa's quick wit. Moments like this sharpened his perception of their shared aspirations. They weren't just fighting for themselves. Here was a stark realization: the battle wasn't merely against Finch but against a corrupt system that suffocated their dignity. "Let us record the findings and get out of here," he urged quietly. They needed a digital backup, a safeguard against the potential backlash. Together, they gathered as much information as they could, feeling the weight of their actions build. Daniel's instincts, once dulled by corporate compliance, now blazed with purpose. Fingers tapping on his phone, he documented the most critical evidence into a note-taking app, his thoughts racing as he organized the fragmented pieces into a coherent whole. This wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about accountability. Each revelation wove together clarity and resolve, lending him the strength he'd sorely lacked. As he typed, Daniel felt a flicker of doubt creep in. What if they were discovered? What if Finch retaliated against them, targeting their jobs, or worse? But with every new piece of information, every critical discovery, his worries transformed into anger, a visceral, driving force. This was their world to reclaim. Done! Lisa exclaimed, her voice low but triumphant as she saved a crucial batch of documents. Daniel turned, heart pounding, leaning closer to her. They exchanged a fleeting smile, a shared acknowledgement of a shift in their partnership that had transformed them both. This wasn't just about revealing wrongdoing, it was about standing up when the stakes were highest. Let us go. Pushing against the limitations of fear, they slipped out of the archives, navigating the complex maze of hallways that could lead to their imminent confrontation. Just as they rounded a corner, they heard voices growing louder, a group of executives heading toward the boardroom. The closer they got, the more palpable the tension felt in the air. Daniel's heart raced. This was it. They were on the precipice of unveiling the truth, yet a wave of uncertainty washed over him. He could feel his resolve trembling under the weight of potential consequences. What if this led to their dismissal? What if Finch rallied his allies against them? The stakes were higher than any gamified corporate battle he'd witnessed before. Suddenly, he realized that this was no longer just about the job, it was about character, authenticity, and courage. If they turned back now, they would erase everything they worked for. Their integrity would vanish in the shadows of the system that sought to silence them. With mounting urgency, Daniel whispered to Lisa, "No going back. We have what we need. It's time to turn this tide." He pushed forward as they made their way toward the conference room. The looming confrontation with Finch and the board awaited them, a moment that could determine their fates, and in that moment, as he prepared to step into the fray, the question lingered in the air: would courage outweigh their fears, or would their fervor be met with the stern law of corporate politics? The doors to the boardroom stood before them. Daniel's next move could change everything. Would he seize this moment, or would hesitation extinguish their hopes? As Daniel pushed the doors to the boardroom open, a sudden wave of determination surged within him. The familiar faces of the executives, seated at a long table that gleamed under the harsh lights, focused their gaze on him. Each individual represented a fragment of the corporate machine that had contributed to both his father's downfall and his own stagnation. But now, he was ready to confront that machine. "Thank you for coming, Daniel," Finch said, his voice slick with practiced congeniality. "We were just about to begin." Daniel glanced at Lisa, standing resolutely behind him. In that brief glance, he felt an unspoken promise of support and resilience. She was with him, sharing the weight of the moment. "I have something to present," Daniel stated, injecting authority into his voice. The room silently anticipated his pitch, tension thick in the air. "Something that requires immediate attention." He felt the adrenaline coursing through him. This was the moment that defined not just his career but also who he was becoming. As he laid out the findings, exposing the unethical practices hinted at in the documents, Daniel experienced a profound shift within himself. The narratives that had once trapped him, fear, compliance, the shadows of his father's legacy, began to dissipate against the clarity of his purpose. "I won't stand idly by while this company exploits its workers," he declared, his gaze unwavering. "We owe it to everyone to face these truths head-on and rectify the injustices." The boardroom erupted into murmurs, disbelief mingled with fear. Finch's face hardened, the congenial mask slipping, revealing the volatile, malicious intent lurking beneath. But inside, Daniel felt a wave of relief wash over him. He had chosen courage over complacency. His heart raced not with fear but with the electric thrill of advocating for what was right. This transformation had taken root somewhere deep within him, pushing aside years of self-doubt. "Your data is misleading," Finch countered, regaining control. "This could destabilize the company. Think of your career." Daniel recognized the subtle threat, but it no longer held the same power over him. It felt like a desperate maneuver from a man who saw his empire crumbling. "I'd rather be unemployed and pursue integrity than be complicit in your reign of deceit," Daniel retorted, his voice steadier than he'd ever imagined it could be. Each word forged a new reality, one where he stood not just to reclaim his father's legacy but to build his own. "Daniel, you need to think carefully," another executive warned. "You don't know the repercussions of these claims." "I am aware of the repercussions and the risks," he answered, "but I am even more aware of the harm this company has caused to its employees who deserve better." The tension in the room was palpable, but with every word Daniel spoke, he felt himself growing stronger, more resolved, and undeniably alive. Instead of backpedaling, his initial anxiety melted away, replaced by a burgeoning conviction. The eyes of his colleagues had changed, the atmosphere shifted, murmurs exchanged laid the groundwork of dissent against Finch's leadership. Gradually, he could see faint walls of defense weakening as other employees began whispering support for his stance, emboldened by Daniel's bravery. In that pivotal moment, the door swung open, and Lisa stepped forward, her confidence shining brightly. "Daniel's right," she called out. "I've seen how the company neglects its values. We have a responsibility to fight injustice together." The impact of her words reverberated in the room, sparking a deeper conversation than Daniel had dared hope for. The weight of collective voices joined together. People who had once felt disempowered began to articulate their frustrations and fears. What had begun in isolation was transforming into a chorus of solidarity. In the aftermath of building momentum against Finch, Daniel realized he had achieved far more than simply exposing corporate wrongdoing. He had dismantled the mental constraints that had bound him. He was no longer the frightened man hidden behind corporate facades, searching for external validation. He had taken the brave step forward, demonstrating fortitude in the face of intimidation. As the board meeting closed, with countless executive heads spinning from the revelations that were laid bare, Daniel stood taller than he ever had. The whispers of doubt that had once haunted his thoughts now seemed distant echoes of a life he had courageously chosen to leave behind. Afterward, amid the unfolding chaos in the boardroom, Lisa turned to Daniel, pride shining in her eyes. "You did it. You held your ground." Her words anchored him amid swirling uncertainties. "Yes, but it was us," he affirmed, newfound confidence shaping his voice. "United, we confronted the truth." As they walked out of the boardroom, the sunlight streamed down, illuminating their path forward. Daniel knew the outcome wasn't guaranteed, but he grasped a crucial truth: he was no longer alone in the darkness. He had forged a new narrative, fracturing the old chains that tethered him and built resilience with Lisa at his side. He had reclaimed not just justice for his father, but also his integrity, purpose, and self-worth. Stepping into the world outside the office building, the air felt lighter, igniting a hope that shone brighter than the shadows that once clouded his path. This was the beginning of a fresh chapter, and he was ready for whatever came next. Now, as you have witnessed Daniel's transformative journey of integrity and courage, it's your turn to embrace your own power. You need to subscribe now to our channel for more exclusive emotional stories that inspire transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. We can only grow together. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this inspiring conclusion. Comment below your reactions and theories. We want to hear from you. Your support means everything in this journey of personal overcoming stories.